I will call to order the meeting of the Parks and Recreation Commission for August 23rd, 2017. We all rise for the Pledge of Allegiance, please. Ready? Pledge. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Ms. Navarez, will you call roll, please?
Chair Longstreet.
Here.
Vice Chair Clark. Commissioner Cavazos.
Here.
Commissioner Lesnar-Buxton.
Here.
Commissioner Martinez-Cohen.
Here.
Commissioner Armbruster.
Here.
Commissioner Perry.
Here.
Do we have any changes to the agenda, Ms. Secretary? Okay. Written communications. We've received only one item for 4A2, so we have that with us. And that brings us to public comment. Any member of the public may address the Commission for up to 2 minutes on any subject within the jurisdiction of the Commission that is not scheduled for a public discussion before the Commission. Total amount of time for public comment is 15 minutes. I do not see anyone for public comment, so we will close public comment. That brings us to Youth Council report, and I see we have a Youth Council member here. Come on up. Welcome. Oh, probably not. There you go.
Hi, thank you. Madam Chair and members of the Commission, my name is Jensen Steady. I'm now the current chair of the Sandbar Youth Council, and I'm here to give you the report. So we are just starting in for the new year. On a positive note, we have several projects that we've already started, so we have a lot of work that we can get going on. Firstly, our project Alma, which is thanks to the Fund for Santa Barbara and Youth Making Change, we're able to actually complete this project. As you may recall, it is to research information on the issues surrounding undocumented teens or teens with undocumented parents. We will be conducting about 10 focus groups with 10 different youth agencies during the months of September and October, and this will be followed up with 2 community-wide educational workshops. Invitations will be sent to the Parks and Rec Commission, and this project will eventually culminate in December. Secondly, we are also planning on being a part of the Day of Caring and working with the Creeks Division and helping with the coastal cleanup on September 16th. We are also partnering with Future Leaders of America and the Coalition of Youth Advocates in hosting a City Council Youth Candidates Forum, which will be held on October 16th. We hope that you will all attend. Our forum will be exclusive to issues that affect youth in our community, as we are the Youth Council. We are also going to be working with City TV and producing a short PSA on secondhand smoking, and this was made possible with a donation from the County of Santa Barbara Tobacco Prevention Grant. In terms of recruitment, there were 7 new members appointed and 4 members reappointed. We had 2 returning members, and we had unfortunately 2 returning members resign in addition to the seniors we lost, and also 2 of the new members had stated that they misjudged their schedules and will not be able to serve. And there is a possible 3rd returning member who also thinks their schedule will be too busy. So unfortunately, we are starting off with 5 vacancies this year, which includes 2 alternative school members that we do not have. So we are looking for youth who would like to serve and volunteer until recruitment begins, which simply means they can volunteer and be a part of the meetings but just can't vote. We're all looking forward to a busy and productive year, and we're also hoping on bringing along all the youth council members eventually to one of these Parks Commission meetings to meet all of you. So we'll let you know about that.
Okay.
Thanks for your time. Any questions?
Thank you. Thank you. Any questions for Mr. Steady? No? Great work.
Great.
Sorry about those vacancies. That's hard, but I think
Yeah.
when you attract type A students, they get busy, don't they?
Yeah, a lot of busy schedules.
Yeah.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Okay, that brings us to commission committee assignment reports. Why don't we start down with Commissioner Lesnar-Buxton?
The neighborhood is widely council meeting was cancelled this month. We need to get in September.
Thank you. Mr. Cavazos.
All right, so I attended the Youth Council committee meeting but as Chairman Jensen stated, he did a great job of recapping. I would like to say that the candidate forum that they have coming up for the city council mayor sounds great. I think we have like 1,000 candidates for mayor, so it's going to be a long one. But I would really encourage them to get that together, and I would really encourage all the candidates to participate because that's the voters of tomorrow. I also want to touch on the recruitment. One of the things that we may have coming back to us, or maybe we can work with council out on, is regarding those vacancies. Because of the way it's structured, they could be sitting with vacancies for like 5 months, 6 months. So maybe there's something we could do to expedite that process and streamline that. But overall, Chairman did a great job recounting that. I also attended the Park Foundation board meeting. We are ramping up the fundraising for Cabrillo Beach. I don't know, my mind's that place down by the beach.
The Arts Pavilion.
Yes, that one. So don't give us money for that. No, but it's an exciting program. I believe there's a $4 million fundraising request. Doesn't all have to come from one person, but hopefully we can all donate our fair share. And then also we had our last of our summer youth concert series that was held over at Playa del Mar in the half shell. This was the first year that we took it over from Mr. Perry down there. Not to tout our own success or toot our own horns, but I think we did a pretty good job. This last one had Spencer the Gardener. Many folks are familiar with him and that band. And one of the things that really captured our vision was he had a horn section with 21, I think was the oldest of that. There was a teenager for sure, so just kind of a mixed band, and they were great, probably the best band out there, no knocking on the other bands, but overall great success. We look forward to doing more of that somewhere, and certainly next summer.
Thank you. Ms. Clark.
On the first Thursday of this month, I attended the Street Tree Advisory Committee meeting, and we made a site visit to all the trees on our agenda and had a fairly lively discussion about all of them, and we'll hear more about that later. And then I had 2 weeks of vacation.
Good for you.
On August 16th, I attended the Creeks Advisory Committee. It was actually a site visit. We visited 2 different projects. The first one was the Las Positas Creek Restoration Project, which unfortunately is not going to be moving forward. We received a report, and it basically says, after a lengthy and thorough design and review process, the Creeks Division staff and engineering design consultant see no viable project and recommend that the city not proceed with the Las Positas Creek Restoration Project at this time. It is our professional opinion that the cost, risk, and complexity of the project outweigh the potential environmental benefits. So they went over all they tried, let's see, 7 different options of trying to make the project work. Has to do with flood drainage requirements by FEMA, as well as a number of other engineering and design, hydraulics, all kinds of different stuff. But unfortunately, they're not going to be able to do the project, and they are going to have to decline a $1.5 million grant and put it back. So that was a huge bummer. But then the next project we went and saw was Arroyo Borough Restoration Project at Hidden Valley Park. That project is still sort of in conceptual and design phase. There's not really a timeline or a budget quite yet, but we got to check out the creek. There is a bunch of different non-native plants there, as well as native plants that they're going to try to focus on removing some of the non-natives to give the natives a larger, space to grow. They are looking at a very small scale project. It's not huge. They've done a ton of community outreach already. I think they've done 3 or 4 community events to get feedback from the residents. But I'm sure we're going to get a report on that coming up soon, but there'll be more information coming. But it was good to see it. There's huge sycamore tree there that's probably, I don't know, it's 80 years old or something. That is just really amazing. I had never been to that part of the creek. So it's a large, the Arroyo Borough is a really long creek, and it's just the section that's by the Hidden Valley Park and neighborhood.
Thank you. Ms. Armbruster.
I unfortunately was out of town and wasn't able to attend the golf committee meeting. However, looking through their minutes, it does look like the men and especially the women's golf club is looking for new members. So if you haven't been out, the golf club is looking amazing. They've done a lot of improvements to it, to mulligans and the course, and they are looking for new members. So go check it out.
Thank you. Mr. Perry, do you have it? We haven't given you any assignments yet.
I have nothing to report.
I think that's fair. We haven't assigned you anything yet. And I don't have anything to report as the Neighborhood Advisory Council was canceled, as Commissioner Lesnar Buxton said. Okay, that brings us to Commission staff communications. Do we have any? Nothing, so ceremonial items. Ms. Zachary.
Chair Longstreet and Commissioners, I would just like to acknowledge that Ramiro Arroyo, who is a Parks Supervisor in the Parks Division, received his 5-year pin at City Council this month.
Excellent. I knew Beto when he was in elementary school. Yes, he grew up on my street, so it's nice to see him being such a contributing member to the Parks Department. Okay, that brings us to our consent items. We have the summary of council actions for information. Were there any questions that anyone had? It was pretty brief this month. If there aren't any questions, we'll move on to acceptance of the minutes for July 26th. Everyone get a chance to go over them?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
So moved.
Motion, is there a second?
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? That passes unanimously. Thank you.
Abstain.
Oh, you're
Saying
okay. All righty. We'll put in 3 abstentions. Okay. Okay, now we are to Street Tree Advisory Committee items. Mr. Downey.
Chair Longstreet and Commissioners, the first item on your agenda is 232 Cottage Grove Avenue. It's a diamond pittosporum tree that has an insect called aphids that sucks sap from the leaves. The complaint is that the debris that drops from the tree creates substantial mess. You might be familiar with this tree. It used to be called Pittosporum rhombifolium. That has a new name, Arantocarpa rhombifolium. The committee reviewed the item and determined that the pest can be treated and the debris lessened from that treatment. So their recommendation is to deny. Staff has moved forward to request proposals for costs to treat for the pest.
Thank you. Are there any questions of Mr. Downey? We do not have any public speakers for this item. Any questions? Motion?
I'll make a motion to agree with the Street Tree Advisory Committee's recommendation to deny the street tree removal at 232 Cottage Grove Avenue of the Arantocarpa rhombifolium, formerly known as diamond pittosporum.
Second.
I'd just like to say I'm glad that you're treating that tree. It's a pretty desolate little block there with not many street trees on it. So I think saving the mature one is the right way to go. So thank you. Okay, if there's no further discussion, all in favor? Aye. Opposed? Any abstentions? At this point, we do have some speakers ahead, and everybody will be given 2 minutes. And I would like to say that any action of the Parks and Recreation Commission made pursuant to Municipal Code Chapter 15.20, tree planting and maintenance, or Chapter 15.24, preservation of trees, may be appealed to City Council within 10 days, pursuant to the provisions in 1.30.050 of the Municipal Code. But just so everyone understands, our decisions can be appealed. Okay, Mr. Downey.
Chair Longstreet and Commissioners, at 636 Ricardo Avenue,
We'll call
there
you.
is an incense cedar that the Bennigans would like to remove. The Commission heard this item at their May 24th meeting. At that time, the Bennigans brought photographs of cracks that were in the garage. The Commission at that point voted the decision back to the Street Tree Advisory Committee to review the additional information with the photographs of the cracks. At this month's meeting, the committee reviewed the new material and the old material. They observed the cracks, which are perpendicular to the tree, not in line with the tree. And they determined that it is extremely unlikely that the roots are the cause of the crack in the foundation for the garage. Rather, it's something more like local geology and things like that that are the cause. The committee voted to recommend that the Commission deny the removal. In addition to the garage, excuse me, in addition to the damaged garage, the tree is damaging the wall that separates the two properties there. The committee just felt that the tree had too much benefit to the community to offset being removed because of the damage to the wall.
Thank you. Are there questions of Mr. Downey at this point? Okay, then we will go to public speakers. Mr. Bannigan, come on up.
I thank the Commission members for their time. Today I presented to Mr. Downey evidence that was requested from the meeting on our front lawn on 8/3/17 when the committee came. They had suggested that we perform some spot evacuation or excavation rather near the site to see if there was in fact root permeation. We have conclusively determined that there is root intrusion into the slab. If you will take a look at Exhibit 2 and Exhibit 3, best illustrated on Exhibit 2, you can see the one strata of masonry coming down. That's the end of the stucco line where the root is embedded and permeating and causing destruction of our garage floor slab is into the concrete there. This is only one location, so it's very likely there are other intrusions. While I think that evidence speaks pretty compellingly to the ongoing damage, the wall is quite evident. You can see we're having to constantly repair our wall, may likely lose our wall. I dug into the soil, and what was extracted in just a half gallon of soil next to our house is all of this root. So the permeation and the damage, it's basically going to destroy our garage wall and side there in a short period of time. So at the last meeting where we were to work with the council, at least I walked away with the impression I would meet with Mr. Downey, we would come up with a resolution. There was some discussion about the species that was selected. We are more than happy to put in a replacement like for like and therefore invest in the foliage canopy and the urban forest on into the future. But right now the tree is in poor health. I wish it could be filmed from the backside. It's about half dead. And what has come from the process, while I've enjoyed working with Mr. Downey, has been that basically a bunch of people, supposed experts, came out to our site and told us why we shouldn't get rid of our tree. I served on the Air Pollution Control District Committee, on the Air Toxics Committee for well over 15 years each, and generally there was a collaboration of industry and regulators here. I'm confused by the process of a bunch of pro-tree people coming to a homeowner and saying that's an equitable resolution process when the clear bias is to not let us remove our tree that is currently damaging our domicile. And we think it's fair and reasonable we be allowed to remove the tree and replace it with a like for like.
Thank you. Are there any questions of Mr. Bannigan? I have one. You talk about putting in a replacement tree. Where do you plan to locate that tree?
We've got a pretty good mound on which the tree currently is. We'll do a stump grinding just for aesthetics, and in a zone further, a little bit further away from the wall on that mound, we will install a root barrier to prevent this from reoccurring. So it literally will be in the same place for all intents and purposes of drive-by and benefit to the community.
Okay, but you're moving it a little bit away from that wall. So
It's only sensible,
yeah.
sure.
Okay. Any other questions? Ms. Clark?
If you move it further away from the wall, it will be closer to the house?
No, it will be closer to the street.
Okay. And I can't remember, that's a low retaining wall in front? Would a tree closer to that?
No, it'll be closer to us in proximity. It'd be like it'd be coming out a couple of feet. It's currently about 16 feet from the house.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions?
Yes.
Okay, Mr. Perry.
Moving it,
Up to the mic. There you go.
moving it forward doesn't protect the wall, though.
The root barrier will, it's ideally not a place to plant a tree that's going to reach this size in maturity, but that was what I believed was the desire of the commission and the committee, if there's some other option.
Again, if it's in an awkward position here, moving it forward, it's still in an awkward position, though, isn't it?
Yeah.
Okay.
But we're willing to do that, and with the root barrier, it should, for a couple of decades, preclude that type of damage.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, thank you. We have another speaker. We have Duke McPherson from the Street Tree Advisory Committee. Welcome.
Thank you, Madam Chair, Commission members. This is new evidence for us on the committee, Street Tree Advisory Committee, regarding the discovery of roots around the house itself. All I have to say is if it was my tree, I'd go to bat for it. This is a really wonderful tree. There are lots of other incense cedars around town, and they are in terrible shape. This one is one of the beauties of the town, and I would certainly try to do things, for instance, put a barrier around the base of the garage itself, number one, and prevent any further intrusion. So that point, the other is that I really have to differ with the arborist report accompanying the application for this. I found that there was quite a bit of dieback. Sure, you expect that inside the canopy. It almost means a healthy canopy, all the green on the outside producing shade to the inner parts of the tree. There is no decline in this tree from my point of view as a certified arborist myself. The area west of the tree is fairly barren on the street and setback, and I think this is, again, another point to preserve this tree. I implore you to save this tree. I'm not just a tree lover. We have condemned many a tree on people's properties for good reason. There are not good reasons in my mind for doing that here. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Are there any questions of Mr. McPherson? No, doesn't look like it. So you're off the hook. Thank you very much. Okay. Oh. Okay, maybe you're not off the hook. Ms. Clark.
I was just wondering, when you talk about installing some kind of barrier between the house and the tree, how labor intensive would that be? What would the cost be, and what would be the lifespan of such a device?
They have manufactured a specific variety of interlocking panels that can be sunk down 12 inches to 18. I would say 12 would be fine. I can't speak to how much it would cost. I don't think it would be an arm and a leg. But again, you got to love the tree to be able to go ahead and do this. I don't think there's much love for the tree by the owners. But they do last a long time.
Thank you. Did you have a question? Do you have a question?
I'm not sure who it's for, so I don't know if I was going to ask Mr. Downey a question.
Okay, I think Mr. Cavazos has a question for Mr. McPherson.
No, for Mr. Downey.
Okay, so I guess you are.
Okay.
Okay, then let's go with Commissioner Martinez-Cohen and then Mr. Cavazos.
I'm interested to hear your reaction to the new information that they just presented right now, because you had just previously stated that the roots were not the cause of the foundation issues, and it sort of looks to me with this exhibit that maybe they are. And then the other question is regarding the letter that the property owners wrote on June 30th, included in the updated package. Item 1 is talking about safety and the root pruning. I think that kind of goes back to maybe the question about the barrier, and they are stating a safety issue with pruning the roots. I remember that being a potential middle ground that we were trying to reach with, if we could prune the roots, could that prevent the damage? If we could put a barrier, could that prevent the damage, save the tree? Trying to come to a middle ground. Because I do feel a little bit sympathetic with the property owners that they're having constant repairs to the wall and to the concrete.
Chair Longstreet, Commissioner Cohen, I'm going to start with the root barrier. Okay. The tree, as stated by the applicant, is 16 feet away from the building.
Okay.
That is sufficient distance that they could trim 1 foot of roots and not have it be a stability issue for the tree. As you may recall in previous conversations, 95% of all tree roots are in the top 3 feet of soil, so removing the top foot does not necessarily remove all of the roots. But they could then install a root barrier at the foundation of the garage there without any detrimental effects on the tree.
Okay.
I'm sorry, and the other portion?
About the damage, I just am curious, what's your reaction to this?
The photographs aren't detailed enough for me to determine whether the roots are following along the side of the foundation or if they've gone under the foundation. Also, the space, if I'm correct, adjacent to the side of the garage is about 18 inches wide. So based on that, the root that you're seeing in the photographs is only about 1 inch in diameter. Foundation should be 18 inches in diameter. A 1 inch root would have a really hard time lifting an 18-inch foundation. I can't provide conclusive information, although based on my experience, that root appears to be going along the foundation and not into it.
So it's kind of growing along the side of it, but not actually into it.
Tree roots follow where they can find moisture and air.
Okay.
Frequently adjacent to a building that might have irrigation in that planter, the irrigation is going to follow also along the building. And it would not surprise me that there are roots along the edge of the building. It would surprise me if they were underneath the foundation.
And the cracks in the foundation are deep in, they're not along the sides? Is that, I'm not remembering.
They are approximately in the middle of the garage
In the
and
middle.
perpendicular to the tree.
Got it. And then, sorry, one just follow up. And do you have any estimate on the cost of removing, like you said, 1 foot of these roots and installing the root barrier? Would you consider it to be cost prohibitive?
The cost of root barrier is about $75 for a 4-foot section. So depending on how much they wanted to install, that would drive the cost. If I were to advise about installing root barrier, I would suggest along the front and along the side for about 15-20 feet each direction. But it's really a determination based on what they find when they excavate the whole thing. It doesn't make sense to put root barrier where there isn't existing roots at this time.
Okay. Be about right.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Mr. Cavazos. He'd covered your questions? Okay. If there are other questions, comments at this time?
I'm at a mental impasse. I don't believe, I sympathize with the property owners. If it was my house, I would be very worried about the garage and the wall and the cost associated with repairing those. And I have no doubt that from your point of view, you're convinced that the tree is causing the damage to the garage and the wall.
And 3 contractors with no interest in the tree.
Correct. But then we're also hearing from some experts, and I did hear you throw out the word supposed experts about the Street Tree Advisory Committee. They're not supposed experts. They're real experts. They've been doing this for, I want to say some of them have been probably doing it for over a decade. But they are experts in their field, so we're hearing from them that we don't have conclusive evidence that the roots are damaging the tree. So I admire your persistence, and I understand. And I'm a property owner too, and I have a giant tree that scares me that I might have to do something with it someday. So I really get where you're coming from.
Wait.
But then we
don't go, this isn't back and forth time. I'm sorry.
But then we do have some, in the municipal code, we have some findings that we have to find for removal. And the one that we could use for approving removal of this tree would be that the safety of persons or property dictates removal. That's the only one I can find that meets the situation. And I'm not entirely convinced that the property is being damaged by the tree. But I am sure that some of these findings for removal aren't met. Like, I don't believe the removal serves principles of good forestry management. And I don't believe that the character of the neighborhood will not be materially affected by removal of the tree. Those are just my comments, and I would love to hear what other people are thinking.
Mr. Cavazos.
I'll kind of also agree that I'm on a mental impasse, is what you call it, but I'm kind of leaning on the other side. I will also agree, Mr. Downey is the smartest tree guy I've ever known, so I'm going to ask that we kind of point that out, and I do consider him an expert. But I also will agree that you got a property owner who, was told that he's not a tree lover. Obviously, I don't think that was a fair assumption either. I think he loves a tree. He's asking to put in another tree, same tree, and basically rectify the damage that, regardless of the garage, I think we can all agree that there's damage to the fence, and then you kind of lean on your safety issue where, who are we to say that eventually that fence isn't going to come down or whatever. So I think in this instance, I would side with the homeowner where, hey, he's seen his situation. He's tried to work with Mr. Downey. He is asking to replace a tree with a like tree. We have certainly granted that before, where someone takes down a tree and replaces it. For me, as long as they're putting up another tree, I'm more than happy to do that. I know it'll take time to get to that growth, but I would side more with the homeowner in this instance.
Other comments? Does anyone else have any comments? Ms. Armbruster? Yes?
For Mr. Downey, what size tree would he need to replace it with to have the same impact to the community or the same, aesthetic look for the community? Would there be a size that would do that?
Chair Longstreet and Commissioner Cohen, Commissioner Armbruster. The city typically plants a rather small tree because the smaller a tree is when it's planted, the sooner it becomes established and begins to grow. There are certainly larger box trees available. I'm not certain in this species. It's a little more rare than others to be in box containers. But once you plant a box container, it sits there until it acclimates, and it takes longer for it to establish than a smaller one. To answer your question, until it replaces this canopy, 20, 30 years, regardless of the size that's planted.
Thank you.
Other comments?
And one more question. When a tree is typically replaced, is it the cost of the property owner or the city? The property owner, correct?
Yeah, this is a setback tree. All
Setback.
of this.
So it would be, I mean, I'm putting on my economics hat. I think it would be more cost effective to treat the roots and do a root barrier than to do a whole new tree. Also, is that not the right assumption? It would be cheaper to.
Wait, yeah, make sure your mic.
Yeah, that's what I mean. I'm saying to do like
Chair
the
Longstreet and
mitigation.
Commissioner Cohen, the cost of installation of a root barrier would be less cost than removal of the tree and replacing it, especially given the fact that he's suggesting he's going to put root barrier in to help protect the wall from the future tree. But it stops the damage to the wall at this point and draws a new line on the sand to start over. So it's the cost would be more to remove the tree and install root barrier than simply install root barrier, but it's a weight issue of whether that's going to be a long-term benefit or not. The value to the community from this existing tree would be preserved by the installation of the root barrier. The removal and replacement with installation of the root barrier will provide time for the Bannigans to be able to enjoy their property without future damage.
And I think as far as cost goes, the applicant has requested this, so that's really not a concern of ours. They're requesting something, and it's we're not asking them to do anything at this point above and beyond that. I would say I went by your house today, and I understand, as has been stated before, about the property rights and the property and your property. I think you're going to miss that tree. I think you're going to be looking at some poorly kept palms and a neighbor that has very poorly kept trees that are camouflaged from your view by your beautiful tree. And that's, I think that's a consideration when you're looking at it, is this tree is adding to the value of your property. I know for you don't maybe see that right now, but a mature tree adds value to a home. So, but that's not what you're asking us. I think it's sad to see this tree go. As a property owner, you've requested something of us, and this commission now has to make findings to see if we can come to the conclusion to remove it or not. So, has everyone weighed in who'd like to, and would we like to hear a motion on this? I do not think this will be an easy decision for this body. Oh, yes, you may.
Mr. Denny, so since you're not convinced that the roots are doing the damage in your mind, and maybe mine, it's not conclusive evidence, these photos, that the roots are causing the damage to the garage, how could we get a definitive statement, and who would it come from, as to whether or not the roots are causing the damage to the garage?
Chair Longstreet and Commissioner Clark, I would be happy to evaluate the roots now that he's exposed them to determine whether or not they have actually caused damage to the foundation. We couldn't observe that before because they weren't excavated. Be happy to do that.
Okay, I think today, though, we need a motion of some sort, and to move this along and give the Bannigans an answer from this commission. Anybody have any feelings of making a motion? Mr. Perry?
I'd like to ask a question, Stu.
Okay.
Has there been any maintenance or repair cost incurred to date that's documented for the wall and or the backside of the garage?
We haven't had...
You have to be at the mic, sir.
We haven't had to do any repair. I mean, it's just a split slab, as you can see, so it's just a question of ongoing safety of that. So no, we haven't done anything to that. And then handymen we've had them, I'd say once every year is not an overstatement, have to respackle and then repaint that wall, and you're dealing with the matching of the paint. I don't have good invoicing of that information.
But you wouldn't consider it a material expense?
As we age and go forward, I think it is a material inconvenience. I don't think in direct cash outlay. I'd prefer not to pay it, as would anyone. I'm more concerned about the safety of the wall. What if it was to fall on someone? That's the primary deal. That and the fact it's destroyed our, as according to 3 contractors, destroyed our driveway. I mean, everybody comes in and looks at it when I try to get a bid on the garage floor, and they go, you know what's busting that floor? It's that tree. I'm like, okay. And so maybe they're supposed experts in, seismic or in concrete, but it's definitely damaging our house. It's a beautiful tree. We love the tree. The tree got too big over the 20 years we were there, is the bottom line.
Okay. Anyone want to make a motion?
I just don't see how we can make a motion with the new evidence without anyone actually laying eyes on it. I know in the past we've postponed making a decision and did it somehow using the words without prejudice, so the property owners wouldn't have to pay another fee to. Do you remember what I'm talking about?
And we did this. Didn't this happen
We
last?
did this last time.
We've done it before.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I would, and I would say we can do that. Mr. Downey can go out and make a definitive decision on what, but the bottom line is, we're getting into a lot of questions about the cost to the homeowner, which is not something that we're up here to consider. We're not here to consider whether it's more economical to take the tree out or to not take it out. That's not what we're here. That's not what's in our findings. Are we going to go to the fact to save this tree that it goes to seismic? Because, look at it's at the top of the hill. Hills in this community fall down. Things crack. That happens. Mr. Downey is not a geological engineer. So I guess those are things that I'm worried. I think it doesn't hurt to put it off a month and have Mr. Downey go look at the roots and talk with the homeowner. I detect that the homeowner wants the tree out, and I don't know that if that's the case, whatever we do is going to make them want that tree at all. That's just my feeling on what I have heard here tonight. I was not here at the original meeting on it. Do we make a decision and let them, if they don't like our decision, go forward to City Council and appeal it? Do we want to take another month and have Mr. Downey look at the roots? We have some options. You're right. But the cost and asking Mr. Downey to go over and above his, he can see whether the roots are headed under the foundation, but he can't tell you that the foundation is stable or not stable. And that's the reality of where you live. I have cracks all over my house because we live in we don't live on rock here. So, Ms. Zachary, you look like you're ready to weigh in on something, are you?
Chair Longstreet and Commissioners, I would only caution you to suggest that staff is going to have a technical determination regarding the foundation. He can certainly look at the tree roots and determine where they are going and provide that information to you by visual observation. Whether that provides you with any additional information that you haven't received tonight, it's not apparent, but if that's a direction you would like to go in, that's something certainly we can do, but it's really only to come back with an observation back to this commission, and ultimately you do need to determine whether you approve or disapprove the tree removal application.
Okay. So shall we move forward in a direction?
I move that we approve the tree removal with them planting a new tree.
Is that a motion?
I'll second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second for removal of the tree at 636 Ricardo Avenue with replacement with the same species. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. Any discussion on this? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay, so we have 1, 2, 3 ayes. Opposed?
Aye.
1, 2, 3, 4. So we have 4 opposed. So that motion failed. Would we like to float another one?
I can make a motion to agree with the Street Tree Advisory Committee's recommendation to deny the removal of the incense cedar at 636 Ricardo Avenue.
Is there a second to that motion?
I'll second.
Okay, we have a second. Is there a discussion of this motion?
Ma'am?
Yes.
I was not able to see the garage itself. I assume other members have the Street Tree Advisory
Just the
Committee.
street tree.
Your interpretation is what's been said. Yes, we're on adobe, we're on soft soil, cement cracks. If the tree's 16 feet away, do you feel that it did any damage to the slab? Or is it insignificant after 25 years of the tree being there?
I think that's where we're over our head. The advisory committee went out there with certified arborists on it, and that's what they came back with. So
Madam Chair.
Right.
that's our.
Madam Chair.
Yes, Mr. Cavazos.
I would just kind of like to point out that the only thing that everybody seems to agree is that the roots are affecting the wall. The garage is kind of up in the air. Yeah, we could table it, but that, for all intents and purposes, is fact. And I think that's the only fact that we have to go on in making our decision.
Thank you.
I would agree with what Commissioner Cavazos just said, but I would also just like to point out that I do think there are other factors that the property owners can do to mitigate the roots while saving the tree and providing those benefits under code, whatever, urban forestry to the neighborhood. And while I do sympathize, I do think that there are other options besides just taking down the tree, and I think those should be thoroughly vetted before we decide to take down a tree, especially given the thorough investigation that both the Street Tree Committee and Mr. Downey and everyone has done. I feel like we have looked at it quite a few ways, and there are some other options, and that's why I do second the motion to deny the removal.
Thank you. No, the public comment part is closed. I'm sorry. Okay, we have a motion on the floor at this time. Any other discussion? All in favor of the motion to concur with the Street Tree Advisory Committee recommendation at 636 Ricardo Avenue to deny removal, say aye. Aye. Opposed?
Nay.
Okay, so we have 4-3 for denial. Now, this is appealable. Okay? Thank you. Yes. All right. Now we come to 4B1, 2920 Hermosa Road. Mr. Downey.
Chair Longstreet and Commissioners, at 2920 Hermosa Road is a setback dragon tree. The unfortunate location of the tree pinches the driveway entrance, making it difficult to get in and out of the driveway. The committee commented that it might be possible to relocate the tree. I do not have any information on a tree of this species, of this size, having been moved before. But one of the committee members is asking questions of people who might be able to do that, and the property owner was interested in hearing information about that. So if approved, they may decide to save the tree and relocate it. The committee also noted that the parkway is full of cement and that there's a lack of continuity in street trees at that location. And by opening up the parkway, we could install a street tree that would compensate for the loss of this tree along the property frontage. The committee recommends that the commission approve the removal on the condition that they plant a designated street tree, which happens to be coastal live oak at this location.
Okay. Are there questions of Mr. Downey? Comments? A motion?
I'll make a motion to conditionally approve the removal in concurrence with the street tree committee on the recommendation that it does be replaced with a 15-gallon street tree.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion. Is there any discussion?
Can we add the findings that the safety of persons or property dictates removal, because it is a hazard for anyone trying to get in and out of that driveway?
Okay.
Thank you.
Is that okay with the maker of the motion and the seconder? Okay. Any other discussion? All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Okay. Abstentions? That passes unanimously. Thank you. All righty, and this brings us to 4B2, and this is 2109 APS, and we do have a speaker for this item.
Chair Longstreet and Commissioners, at 2109 Alameda Padre Serra, the applicants are new owners for the property. They're trying to clean things up. There are 2 street trees on their application to remove. There's a jacaranda in the left photo, a orchid tree in the right photo, and there's a group of setback trees that they're requesting to remove that provide a hedge line for the property. The location of the street trees are such that they are immediately adjacent to the curb and were installed without the city's knowledge sometime in the past, so they weren't developed as a single trunk tree. It would be difficult to restructure these trees and take some time to do that, but over time they could be structured into a single trunk tree. However, the trunks that remain are at the edge of curb right now, and as they get larger they will extend into the roadway. The applicant is, there's very little parking along this stretch, and the trees are located at locations right where people would open their passenger doors. It makes it difficult to get out of vehicles. For the setback trees, they are part of a hedgerow and had at some point been topped at about 10 feet. The regrowth has caused significant issues with the stability of those branches because they're not attached as strongly as the original branches were. The committee reviewed these trees, and their recommendation was to approve all of the both street trees and all of the setback trees except for the white Bauhinia, which is in this location. The white Bauhinia is fairly rare, and they saw that there could be some pruning work done to attempt to preserve that tree. I'm going to note that in this photograph down at the base, there's a bunch of the debris that the owners have been clearing from the property stacked there, and this was the condition when the committee visited the site. After the committee visited the site, the property owners cleared out that debris and discovered that there's a hollow in the white orchid tree. That handle that you see in the right photograph is a probe that is 4 feet tall, and it went all the way down to the bottom of that hollow in the tree. Staff is recommending, the committee recommended that if the commission decided to remove the white orchid tree as well, that the approvals be conditioned on 2 street trees be planted, but if the white orchid would be retained, only 1 street tree be planted. So after discovering this defect, staff is recommending that you go with the option to condition 2 street trees to be placed and approve all the trees on the application.
Okay. Are there questions of Mr. Downey right now? We do have a public speaker for this. Okay. Mr. Nelson, come on up. Welcome.
Thank you, Commissioners. I just wanted to make sure that the condition of the white orchid tree was announced to you, and Mr. Downey's done that. Thank you very much, because it was certainly a compromised and damaged tree, and we didn't feel we should be held hostage to keeping the tree in exchange for planting trees. That's still the case, and I think I'm pretty much of the opinion and disagree with the approach that to take a damaged and unhealthy tree off my setback, that I'm held to replace it with a street tree. So I just wanted to express that to you, but otherwise, thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay. Questions. I have a question about street tree placement in that area. What is? I was up there, and it's, there's no sidewalks or anything. Does that mean that the trees can be placed closer to the applicant's property and away from the street, and still leave enough room for people to walk safely and all of that?
Chair Longstreet and Commissioners, the road right-of-way line at this is approximately at the front of their hedge. So if these trees are removed, there is space to move them over a foot or so that they're not going to be right on the curb. The committee has requested a item be placed on their agenda to change the current designation. The current designation is the orchid tree, but that is a fairly high water use tree, so they want to recommend something be included for this stretch that would be more water tolerant. You'll see that coming in the future. But yes, there is space to move them farther away from the curb while maintaining pedestrian access.
Okay, thank you. Other questions or comments? Do we see a motion?
I have just one quick question. So you just said the designated street tree right now is it the white orchid tree? And then, but they're going to change it? Do you have any idea what they're going to change it to?
Chair Longstreet and Commissioner Cohen, the current designation is orchid tree, which has a blue or purple flower. It's closely related to the white orchid that's in the setback. I do not know where the committee will go with recommendations as far as replacement species, but I anticipate it'll be something more drought tolerant that has a growth habit more conducive to the Alameda Padres area in that location. The orchid tree tends to be a big round tree. If you could kind of see it's pretty much rounded here. That's the white orchid, but the canopy would be similar for the other orchid tree.
Thank you. Okay. Is there a motion for this item?
Sorry, just one more quick follow-up. And so if we did approve it with the street tree requirements, could they choose the current designated tree, or would they have to choose the future one, or either one?
Chair Longstreet and Commissioner Cohen, the municipal code states that whatever tree is designated must be the species that's planted. If that designation changes in between the time that they get their approval and they decide to move forward with removals, then whatever is designated at that time would be the tree that they would be required to plant. It is feasible that the committee may come to you with a recommendation to add a designated tree as opposed to remove the
Got
Bauhinia,
it. Mhm.
in which case there would be a choice of trees.
Got it.
It all depends on how that designation moves forward and when the applicants choose to pull the permit for the work if the commission approves the removals.
Got it. Thank you.
And I would also like to say the idea of a low water tree and having that available for choice is very important. So I would think that as part of the motion, we might want to say that we're looking to the Street Tree Advisory Committee for new recommendations for that block or that area. Okay. Motion.
I'll make a motion that we agree with the Street Tree Advisory Committee's recommendation to approve the removal of the aforementioned trees at 2920 Hermosa Road based on the condition that the applicant plants 2 street trees.
Yeah, I think
2109.
Oh, sorry. 2109 Alameda Padre Sierra, on the condition that the applicant plants 2 street trees. Do we need to?
You might add that that as designated by the Street Tree Advisory Committee and
as designated by the Street Tree Advisory Committee.
I'll second that.
Okay. Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Thank you. You may remove your trees. Yeah, Mr. Downey, I'll walk you through the process. Okay. Thank you, Mr. Downey. And that brings us to our director's report. Ms. Zachary.
Chair Longstreet and Commissioners, it's hard to believe that summer is actually coming to an end. It feels like it just started. But as you know, summer's super busy for Parks and Recreation. If it's not because there's a recreation program, it's because people are in our parks. More people are in our parks. So your director's report talks about our Concert in Park series, which was very successful. 4 concerts, up to 4,000 people each time participating. And the Pass the Hat raised some funds to help us get ready for next year, as well as the other fundraising that we were able to achieve. Now that summer is over, we're going into fall classes, and we always have a free classes week, so I would encourage you to check it out. It will be that September 11th. I'm always jumping to the 12th or 13th. That week of September 11th, there's lots of things going at Carrillo Recreation for both kids and adults. It's wonderful opportunities to try out something new. If you don't have time to do it, tell your friends, invite your family. We're doing a lot of marketing and promotion around it, and it's a great way to introduce people both to the classes but also to the facility, given that it's a wonderful recreation facility. And then September also brings more volunteer work as people get back into the swing of their daily lives. And we have Creek Week, which I believe, I want to say is maybe something like the 17th annual, because it started before the Creeks Division was created, maybe the year before. Anyway, it's a great time to go out and explore different things that are going on in our creeks, lots of different participants. And you have in your packet, we sent you the little postcard that we have advertising it. So encourage you to do that. There's educational, there's fun events, there's youth events, and then we also have the
18th annual, it says.
18th, so I was off 1 year.
You were close.
It's the Land Shark Tour. If you haven't been on it, go. And if you miss this year, there'll probably win one next year, and that's pretty neat. And then lastly, Annual Day of Caring. We do that every year. You heard from Jensen Steady that the Youth Council is going to participate in a creek cleanup. We're also focusing our efforts on a couple of our community gardens that need some TLC, Pilgrim Terrace and Rancheria. And so that will be an opportunity for folks to get involved and spend some time outside and beautify those parks. With that, I'd be happy to answer any questions that you have about what's going on. And thank you.
Questions of Ms. Zachary? Anybody?
If somebody did want to participate in the United Way Day of Caring at one of our community gardens, how would they go about signing up for that?
We actually, the best way, because it's organized through the United Way, is actually to contact them. And the staff report has their numbers 965-8591. I Google United Way and come up with that. And we're always looking for volunteers. They fill out a whole sheet, they organize the whole thing, and we put the staff out there to make it happen.
Thanks.
Thank you. Okay, well, busy summer, and it is hard to believe it's over already. So this brings us to Water Quality Code Enforcement Program update.
Chair Longstreet and Commissioners, we have Chris Clark, who is a Code Enforcement Officer for the Creeks Division, for today's presentation. Chris, I'm not going to get it right, but he's been with Parks and Recreation in 3 different positions. This is his 3rd. He was a lifeguard, he's a park ranger, and now he works in the Creeks Division. So he brings a wealth of experience and knowledge about our beaches and creek areas to the position.
Great.
Madam Chair, Commissioners, I give you a overview and update of our excuse me. Oh, sorry. Okay. No. Okay. There we go. Sorry about that. Our water quality enforcement program. Give you an overview of the past fiscal year, FY17, and some historical background on that as well. So our stormwater and urban runoff pollution prevention and enforcement program. Objective of this program is to identify and eliminate sources of water pollution to the city storm drain system. This includes streets, creeks, and the ocean. And as well, we also ensure that pollution is cleaned up from those locations, and any illegally dumped items are also removed. I enforce Sandbar Municipal Code 16-15010. This prohibits water pollution into the city's storm drain system. This governs over illicit discharges, which are non-stormwater discharges of water pollution. And non-stormwater meaning anything other than rainwater. Examples of this are runoff from construction sites, washing on commercial property, mobile business washing, such as mobile car washing, carpet cleaning businesses, discharges from leaking vehicles, and also illegal dumping. We have our water pollution hotline, 897-2688. This is my direct line. We man this line during our regular business hours, 8 to 5, and our goal is to investigate all reports immediately. And we have a 100% same-day response for FY17. Reports can also be submitted online through www.sbcreeks.com, which takes you to the city website, and there's a function to do an online reporting of illicit discharges there. Sources of illicit discharge that are sources of reports of illicit discharges to the city. These come from Creeks Division staff, other city staff, residents, and also other government agencies as well. About a quarter of all of our reports come from city staff, come from Creeks Division staff, excuse me. About 40% from other city staff who are trained to identify illicit discharges. And then about a third from residents and a little over 5% from outside of the city. This graph shows the number of reported violations over the last several years, starting in FY13. Number of notices of violations, or NOVs, issued. So those are reports that were then identified as actual violations of the municipal code. Citations issued. Citations are issued when there's been a second violation within 12-month period at the same address. And then the number of reported violations receiving the same day enforcement. In the last several years, we have always been able to respond to each report same day. As you can see, there's been a decline in the number of reports over the last several years. We attribute this primarily to the current drought that we're going through People are using less water, so we're seeing less water being discharged into the streets. We've also seen an increase in enforcement by other city departments on reducing water use. So we attribute that to the primary driver to the reduction in the number of reports. These are, each report is categorized into different sources for the discharge. The largest portion of those is coming from commercial and industrial activities. Residential properties and construction sites also come up as a large percentage, and that concurs with the historic average that we've seen over the last several years. I have several examples of illicit discharges in the field. This is a quick video. This is a public alleyway, so that counts as a city street, which is a water course, part of the storm drain system. See someone taking the mop water, dumping it out into the street, and you'll see it comes down in pools into this area where you can see the dissolved asphalt from what was likely years of discharging detergent-laden caustic water.
And really, in that situation, you're asking somebody to use their drain, right? Just to put it down the
Yes,
sink.
yes. All wastewater should go into the city's sanitary sewer system.
Okay, this isn't a tough one.
Yeah.
Okay.
In that particular case, the person had to walk by their mop sink to get out the door. Here we have an example of a paint discharge. I was actually inspecting a property adjacent to Mission Creek when I noticed a white discharge going into the water. This was during the rainy season. I turned around about 5 feet behind me. A painter was washing his equipment into an outdoor drain. So it traveled about 30 feet directly into the drain, into the creek. Water main breaks. These contribute a lot of sediment into the discharges. Emergency crews, primary directive is to shut off the water and repair the line, but they also take measures to try to reduce the amount of sediment that's discharged into the storm drain system and then clean up as best as possible afterwards. Construction discharges, a lot of times this is concrete slurry from cutting or mixing or pouring activities. These use a lot of water, and generally speaking, we want to see this stuff contained on the job site so that it doesn't end up discharging into the streets. We do require cleanup in order to abate these violations. So in a case like this, we would require that the homeowner or the construction company clean up the discharge. Sediment is also a large is discharged regularly from construction sites as well. Illegal dumping and encampment cleanups is another large portion of what I do. Encampments and dump sites generally are discovered by Creeks Division staff, but they're also reported to us by residents and other staff as well. We rarely find a responsible person and are able to take enforcement actions on these types of discharges, but we always ensure that they are cleaned up. We have several hot spots throughout the city where we tend to get repeated illegal dumping or homeless encampments. Many locations along Mission Creek in the downtown corridor, drainages near the fire training tower, Sycamore Creek below Montecito Street, and Arroyo Borough at Hope Avenue in Modoc. This is an example of an encampment under the Montecito Street Bridge at Mission Creek. As you can see, people move in and they are in there to stay a while. This is about 3 feet from the water's edge. This is an abandoned encampment that was found on Mesa Creek, which runs along Cliff Drive, the backside of DFP, Douglas Family Preserve. This was hidden quite well in a ravine. It had probably been abandoned for over a year. As you can see, there was significant plant growth through the abandoned material. Here we have an encampment within concrete drainage at Hope Avenue. This is Arroyo Borough Creek. This one photo on the left is taken before a storm event. photo on the right is taken after the storm event. As you can see, it is likely that the same tent ended up further downstream, embedded in the creek. Examples of illegal dumping. The one on the left is adjacent to the railroad station, Amtrak station, and the one on the right is adjacent to El Estero Water Treatment Plant and the fire training tower. I have a short video of an encampment location adjacent to the fire training tower. So this is behind Chase Palm Park expansion along the railroad tracks at Calle Cesar Chavez. I'll skip ahead a little bit so we get to the rest of the encampment. Cleanup for this location started in February, ended in April, and we removed over 4,000 pounds of trash from this location. And since, we have also conducted 2 additional cleanups of the same location since then. All encampments must be posted with a 48-hour warning to give occupants the opportunity to remove their personal belongings. Anything that is left remaining in the area is considered abandoned and is removed by the city. Items of value are retained at the police department or at the parks yard for the owners to retrieve their items. Everything else is taken to the landfill. Some statistics for FY17, we paid $95 to our contractor per site cleaned up. This past year, we cleaned 1,300 sites. 84,500 pounds of trash was removed, including over 200 bicycles, over 100 grocery carts, a number of mattresses, and as you can see, a large volume of paint cans, clothing, bedding items, and feces. We can look back at data from the past. We did have a change in the contractor for FY17, and we have seen some changes in the numbers reported. This is due to different techniques of counting. In the past, we generally counted one, meaning that those items were present at a site. The new contractor is counting individual items and tallying everything. So we've seen a reduction in poundage, but more accurate counting of the items, and also an increase in the number of locations that are cleaned up. And with that, if the Commission has any questions.
First, thank you a lot for not only for the report, but for the work you're doing, because it's obvious it really is necessary to the health of our community. And I know I walked across the Ortega Street footbridge last week, and just the whole railroad track right away is a disaster. It makes you wonder, when we have all these garbage trucks going around, how we generate so much trash that's just out. So, do we have any questions or comments? Mr. Cavazos.
I would also like to commend you. I was really impressed with the same-day response. Not that I would ever say it, but government sometimes tends to work a little slowly. I think that's very impressive. And not only that, but you've done that, it looked like 5 years running. So, again, commend you on that, Mr. Benson. Your team is always awesome. So $95 per cleanup, and I did the math, and someone checked me, but $123,500 that we're paying to clean all that stuff up. So not only do we have to eat the cost, but from the time that you guys get out there and get to the cleanup, that stuff's in there. Sometimes there's toxic stuff in there. And, you know, I think there's a lot of things that people don't really understand is going on, right? And I think we need to keep trying to do whatever we can to get that stuff down. We want to get those sites down. I'm just kind of blown away by that number. You know, $123,500 $500 that we have to eat to clean that stuff up. Not to mention the effect that it has on the water and the creeks and everything else. So shocking. I was kind of shocked by that.
Yeah.
Where do those dollars come from? Are those creeks dollars or general fund dollars or?
Madam Chair and Commissioner Clark, funds are from Creeks Division, from the transient occupancy tax that we collect.
Okay.
Chair Longstreet, if I could just add, this is just what the Creeks Division does. It's not everything that happens in the city to address misuse of public space and open space, and in this case, habitats that we're trying to preserve and enhance. And it never fails to surprise us as well. I think maybe Chris would echo this, how it continues. But we're trying to find solutions over time.
It is a constant topic at the Neighborhood Advisory Council about cleaning up neighborhoods, and I am amazed that the number of mattresses, couches, and garbage that just gets out there. Ms. Martinez-Cohen.
Yeah, I was just going to say thank you again, too, for the report. I'm shocked at the amount of debris that is generated and picked up, and I know it's not a very sexy job, but I really appreciate that somebody is out there doing it. And if anybody's watching, I mean, this is the hard work that people at the city are doing every day, and it's not cheap. And I think building awareness is part of the solution.
Other comments? Or I would wonder if this would be an appropriate presentation, since you have it already up and going, to have at the Neighborhood Advisory Council, because it is just a constant topic. And as you said, Ms. Zachary, it is only one portion of it. We have Marburg running around picking up stuff. We have Public Works, parks, everybody. So it would be nice to get the word out in a little bit broader way. But thank you so much. If there's no other, thank you for this. Oh, yeah.
I was just going to say, I imagine part of the reason your job in educating the public is so difficult is that the people that really need the education don't have access to it. And it's keeping our stormwater and our creeks clean is probably not their priority. They'd rather have shelter, and they don't have choices on where they're going to defecate. And so I think the problem is not just, it's bigger than our creeks.
I would say it is in a sense, but I've looked at, like, down at the train station, they've put out the porta potty. And yet we still have, I'm sure, areas right around the porta potty where people are making a mess. There's one gentleman that lives by the porta potty every morning. I drive by him. He's on the sidewalk. So it is a bigger issue. But when I look at those couches, those didn't come from a homeless encampment. In my neighborhood, they come on the 31st of the month when everybody moves out. And I can't even just blame students, because it's been going on for too many years. I don't have a use for it. Boom, it's out on the street. I don't think landlords take a proper responsibility for emptying their apartments. People empty them to get their deposit back, and they drop it down the block 2 houses and go. So I think there's a lot of issues that I think know the number of people that don't realize they get free pickups from Marburg. Yeah. Yes, you get 2 free pickups a year from Marburg, and they'll come out and take, an organized pile of stuff of certain. You can only do certain items, but it's that all of that plays into it. So I think it's especially important with the things like the mop water, but what we see on the streets with the sewage spills from RVs and things like that are really health hazards. Thank you for taking care of that. That's not a glamorous job. All right. We look forward to seeing this presentation at Neighborhood Advisory Council. Thank you. Okay, we are now completed our old business, and we're on to new business, and we're on to liaison appointments. I just want to say there was a day we had 17 separate liaison appointments on this commission. Yes, we had. And then in one of the budget crises, we went, and stopped staffing quite so many. So this is a piece of cake. So we have a new commissioner who will need an assignment of some sort. And all of us have something. So is everybody okay with what they have? Changes?
I am not. So I am not able to attend the arts and crafts show. Tuesdays are not good for me. I have tried to attend a number of times and have not yet ever attended a meeting. I went to one when it got moved and they didn't tell me. So I tried to go like twice and it didn't work out. Anyways, I can't.
So you would like to give that up?
I would like to give that one to potentially our new commissioner.
Does that work for you? I think it's a nice place to start. Okay. Then we will put Mr. Perry there. Anybody else have any issues?
Not an issue. I just noticed the Front Country Trails is no longer on here. Are we expecting peace and harmony forever in the Front Country?
Chair Longstreet and Commissioner Clark, we have not had a task force meeting for probably
5 years?
5 or 6 years. If we do in the future, which would not be a bad idea, having been involved in it since 2007 myself, we would probably start the whole process over again. And it just seemed that since it really wasn't functioning as a task force, that it misrepresented what the department was working on. That said, it's not forgotten. And one day, hopefully, we will get back to having a multi-jurisdictional way of meeting consistently to talk about trails management. I would add for commissioners that are wondering, are we doing anything? We're still doing things on the trails. It's just that process hasn't continued while we've just focused mostly on getting as much maintenance done as we can with no funds.
And I would also say we achieved certain things, some rapport for staff, and it became an issue. The cost of having these meetings adds up. And we did that one for 5 years, probably monthly. It was a long time. So we're set with Commissioner Perry taking over arts and crafts, and that's that. Okay, that was easy. And now we have the annual election of the chair and the vice chair for action. So we have a fairly new commission, I would say. And I have done this a year and done it many other years, but I'm willing to go another year on this. And what I would like to say is I hope all of you will consider, once you have a little time on the commission, taking this role. It's important to have that leadership, and I would be willing to work with anybody or answer any questions. But I know it's hard to jump into it at the very beginning. So that's what I wanted to say. And I would also say this year, if someone wanted not to step in as let's say a vice chair this year or whatever, we can look at it mid-year and say, we'll keep it the way it is, and then mid-year we'll revisit and we'll bring somebody in who is interested in being chair next year to have some time to maybe chair a meeting or two. I'll go on vacation. Don't worry. And, but to come to the meetings that Ms. Zachary and I have to plan for our commission meetings and things. So,
I was curious, can you tell us all, especially because there are a lot of new people, what does it exactly entail? I didn't know that you guys met ahead of time. And is it typical that the vice chair then becomes the chair? That was my other question.
Chair Longstreet and Commissioner Martinez-Cohen, it often is that the vice chair is getting ready to become chair. This commission has often maintained the same chair for multiple years, depending on where commissioners are with what they want to do or how much time they have to commit. Other commissions, like the Planning Commission, they rotate every single year. So they always change. Their workload is much different than this commission's workload. Not to say that you don't have really important things to do every month, because these are important meetings for the department and certainly for the community. For the chair, the practice in the past has been that we meet in advance of the meeting and talk through the agenda so that the chair is prepared in case something different was to come. So it's a little extra work there. And then when we're talking about planning for the future, I will often reach out to the chair and say, these things are pending. What do you think? Should it be this? Should it be that? How would you think staff should structure this? Because I rely on the chair to think about how the commission might want to weigh in on something. And that could be site visits, it could be tours, it could be topics. That doesn't necessarily mean commissioners can also come forward and say, hey, can we put something like this on a future agenda, or reach out to the chair and do that as well. And then, to be honest, and obviously Chair Longstreet can speak to this the most, chairing the meeting's kind of important in terms of the Roberts Rules of Order and the Brown Act, and so we take all those things pretty seriously. And so part of that is just learning that. You had a lot of discussion tonight about trees, more so than every month. And so again, part of it is being able to lead that discussion or manage that discussion, so the commissioners feel like you're actually having the discussion you need to have before you take an action. So hopefully that helps. I don't know if Chair Longstreet wants to speak to how much time she thinks it includes.
I would also add that the chair is expected to attend appeals and represent the commission, budget meetings, anything where the commission should weigh in to city council. So
got it. Okay.
Those kinds of activities, sometimes serves on meetings with different other commissions and that kind of thing. So it's not a whole lot, but as Ms. Zachary was saying about managing the meetings, we've had fairly light meetings, but I think the last one we had that required some heavy management would be for the East Beach Grill.
Right.
Those kinds of meetings where you may have 25 to 30 public speakers and some discussion or presentations that need to be managed. So that's kind of it. And that's when I refer to the newness. That's you have to sit through a couple of those to get when you're going to exit a speaker and how to do that gracefully. Sometimes it's not so easy, but yeah. So I would say that's the extra part of it.
Okay, well, that's
right.
very helpful. Thank you
Okay.
for stepping up for another year.
Oh.
I would like to nominate you.
Was it? Do we have to nominate?
Chair.
I'd like to ask, and with no reflection on your job, B, because I think you do an outstanding job, but I'm more in favor of rehashing, removing, and getting someone in there. Unfortunately, that would mean you, and I was wondering if you would entertain serving as chair. Would you be honored?
Well, I was thinking about this earlier, and given BB's extensive history and experience with the department, no, honestly, I was thinking about how will the department be best served right now. Sure. I've finally gotten over my fear of public speaking, but do I have the history that she does? No. It might be something that I would be interested in if I could maybe train with BB for a period of time.
Well, let's do that.
So you'd want to continue serving as vice chair as well?
I would be interested in that, yes. Unless.
But I really...
If you're nominating her for chair, does that mean you're going to nominate yourself to be vice chair next?
No.
Can I make a motion to close the nominations? Can I make a motion to close the nominations?
Yeah, do we have all the nominations we want? Okay. So where we stand right now is chair and
I would nominate
Ms.
Ms. Clark for vice chair.
chair. Okay, so we have, all right, then any more discussion? And I really do encourage everybody, and if you want to talk about it, and so that we start moving it through the entire commission. But we did this year get hit with a lot of turnover, and people need to get comfortable too. So, okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Okay, that passes, and we will do this, and we will work towards sharing the wealth here, folks. Anything else for this meeting?
Not for this meeting, but I would like to ask Ms. Zachary. I know we talked about at the park meeting the RFP for the East Beach Grill, for the replacement of that. Could we possibly get that on the agenda for next time to just get an update where that is?
Chair Longstreet and Commissioner Cavazos, I anticipate having an update for the commission on the whole project. It may not be the September meeting, but it will be the October meeting. And if there is information that I can share with you in advance of the meeting, I would be happy to do that. So happy to plan that. We're actually, and rather than get in a discussion now, since it's not noticed on the agenda, we're in the process of a lot of moving parts. And I would be happy to actually, if you like, send a communication to the commission to the effect of where we are with various things.
Thank you. Okay. And well, with that, we will adjourn this meeting.